I never imagined I'd betray my best friend, but here I am, confessing to the darkest moment of my life. Emily was my rock. We shared everything, secrets, dreams, yet in a moment of weakness, I shattered that bond. It was a humid summer evening in Chicago, the air thick with the stench of garbage and stale beer from the alley behind the bar. We were celebrating Emily's recent promotion, a milestone that should have been joyful. As the night wore on, the atmosphere shifted, laughter faded, replaced by an unsettling tension I couldn't identify. Perhaps it was the flickering light or the bartender's lingering gaze. Fueled by too many cocktails, I noticed Jake, her boyfriend, looking at me in a way that stirred a rush of adrenaline. He was charming, and the thought that he might be interested in me blurred the lines of right and wrong. As midnight approached, a dangerous game unfolded, exhilaration mixed with dread. When we stepped outside into the oppressive heat, Emily was tipsy, laughing about something I couldn't recall. I caught Jake's eye, and a silent understanding passed between us, igniting something reckless. I had always prided myself on loyalty, yet there I was, flirting back, the air thick with unspoken tension. When Emily excused herself for the restroom, the world narrowed to just Jake and me. The streetlights flickered, casting shadows around us. "You know," he said, his voice low, "I've always thought you were stunning." My heart raced as I absorbed his words, a mix of flattery and guilt. I felt his breath against my skin, and in that moment, I was lost. I can still feel the rough brick wall against my back as Jake leaned in, his lips brushing mine. Everything else faded, the city sounds, the smell of sweat and beer. It was just us. I was painfully aware of how wrong it was, yet I craved it. As I kissed him back, I could almost hear our friendship splintering. Emily returned, and the shock on her face was etched in my memory. I had seen that expression before, but never directed at me. Drowning in shame, I couldn't pull away from Jake. The reality of my actions crashed over me like a tidal wave, yet I was frozen, paralyzed by guilt and desire. The aftermath was a blur. Emily's tears, the pain in her voice as she confronted me, her heart breaking while mine raced with fear and regret. I tried to apologize, to explain it was a moment of weakness, but my words felt hollow. I was losing her, and the gravity of my actions sank deeper with each second. That night marked a turning point. A chasm opened between us that could never be bridged. I had tasted betrayal, leaving a bitter residue on my soul. Regret was a nauseating reminder of my choices. In the months that followed, I became a ghost in my own life, haunted by what could have been. I watched Emily move on, her laughter now directed at others, while I wallowed in the repercussions of that reckless moment. I never truly forgave myself, and the shattering of our friendship echoed in my mind like an unending nightmare. As I reflect on that night, I realized the lines between right and wrong can blur, leading to devastating choices. I am left with the heavy weight of secrets, a confession that offers no solace or redemption, just the stark reality of what I've done and lost.
I never imagined I'd find myself staring down a body in the middle of a deserted street, but here I was, trembling and drenched in cold sweat. My name is Mark, a 32-year-old graphic designer living in a nondescript apartment in a suburban neighborhood. I've always prided myself on being the quiet type, the one who keeps to himself. But beneath that calm exterior lurked a man hungry for a thrill. Little did I know that hunger would lead me to a night I can't wash away. It started innocently enough at a local bar where the air was thick with the scent of stale beer and popcorn. I was nursing a drink, feeling the weight of my mundane life, when I spotted her, a girl with wild hair and eyes that sparkled like they were hiding secrets. She was laughing, the sound slicing through the smoky haze, pulling me toward her like a moth to a flame. We exchanged a few words, and in that moment, I felt alive. We drank, talked, and lost track of time until the bar began to empty. As we stumbled into the night, she whispered about adventures. My heart raced as she suggested something reckless, something that would break the monotony of my existence. We ended up in an alleyway behind the bar, the pungent smell of garbage mixing with the intoxicating scent of adrenaline. My pulse quickened as she pushed me against the cold, rough brick wall, her breath warm against my face. I was caught in a whirlwind, and I didn't want it to stop. But when she pulled out a small bag of powder, the air shimmered with something darker. My excitement turned to confusion, then to horror as she handed it to me. "Just one line, you'll feel invincible," she said, her eyes gleaming with anticipation. I hesitated, feeling the texture of the paper crinkle in my fingers, but curiosity overruled my better judgment. A line turned into another, and the world morphed into a kaleidoscope of colors and sounds. I felt like I was floating, untouchable. Things spiraled quickly after that. We hopped into a stranger's car, laughter echoing in the confined space as I felt the thrill of the unknown. We veered through the streets, the wind whipping through my hair, leaving behind a life that felt like a cage. But the high faded, and what came next was creeping dread. I didn't know where we were headed. The girl's laughter turned manic, and the driver's eyes glinted with something sinister. I remember the sudden stop, the screech of tires against asphalt, and then everything became a blur. We stumbled out, and that's when we found him. An older man lying on the ground, the right side of his face smeared with blood. Panic coursed through me like ice water. The girl laughed again, but this time it was different, echoing with madness. I wanted to run, to flee, but I was frozen, my heart pounding in my chest. In that moment, I felt a violent mix of power and fear. We were in control, yet completely powerless. I don't know what drove me to lean down toward him, to touch his shoulder, to feel the warmth of his blood seep through my fingers. It was surreal. The texture was slick and warm, a shocking contrast to the icy dread tightening around my throat. I looked into his eyes, searching for a flicker of recognition, but all I saw was the abyss staring back. The girl was taunting him, teasing him, and with every word I felt a darkness unfurl inside me. I should have stopped it. I should have pulled her away and called for help, but instead I watched, entranced, as she danced around his body, laughing and mocking him. Her joy felt contagious, and the remnants of the drug coursing through my veins warped my senses. The alleyway was filled with the metallic scent of blood and the pungent odor of desperation. As he pleaded for help, my mind shattered. I felt the urge to pull away, to hide, but the thrill of chaos had a grip on me. I knelt down and whispered something incomprehensible, unsure if I was trying to comfort him or myself. Then, as if the universe conspired against me, I felt a surge of rage. I struck him, once, fueled by adrenaline and confusion. His gasp echoed in the night, a sound that would haunt me forever. In that moment, I crossed a line, a point of no return. The girl's laughter morphed into hysterics, and I realized too late that I had become part of something monstrous. We ran, stumbling into the night, leaving behind a piece of my humanity interred in that alleyway. I never looked back, but the image of that man's pleading eyes is seared in my mind. I don't know what happened next, and I don't want to. I can't tell anyone, can't share this burden. I live each day with this dark stain on my soul, trapped in a cycle of shame and fear, knowing that I embraced the abyss rather than turning away.
I still hear echoes of my laughter in that small, dark room. Laughter that felt like a punchline, but only masked my growing horror. I was an ordinary guy in my 30s, with a desk job, a small apartment, and an unremarkable life. I never imagined I could do something so twisted, but that night changed everything. It started innocently, a few drinks with friends at a dive bar down the street. The air was thick with the scent of cheap beer and stale smoke, clinging to our clothes. We laughed, reminiscing about our wild 20s, and the conversation quickly spiraled. Someone suggested a game of truth or dare, and the stakes rose, fueled by drunken bravado. The dim lighting flickered above us, casting odd shadows on our faces, a surreal backdrop to the chaos unfolding. As the game progressed, the dares became outrageous. One dared me to steal a traffic cone outside. I felt the cold metal against my skin, the thrill of rebellion coursing through me. But then someone, with that devilish glint in their eye, dared me to break into an abandoned warehouse. Adrenaline surged through me. I felt invincible, my heart racing with a mix of fear and excitement. The warehouse loomed ahead, an ominous structure, filled with broken glass and graffiti-covered walls. Upon entering, the musty odor of decay enveloped me. I half expected ghosts of the past to emerge from the shadows, but instead, I found something worse. In the corner, amidst the rubble, lay a makeshift nest of discarded belongings, tattered blankets, empty bottles, and faded photographs. My instinct urged me to turn away, but curiosity clawed at me. I picked up a photograph of a little girl with bright blue eyes and a toothy grin. Guilt washed over me as I pondered her story, how she ended up in a place like this. A knot tightened in my stomach, an unsettling sense of violation. Yet, drawn by an unseen force, I sifted through the possessions. Each item felt like an intrusion, but I couldn't stop. It was like peeling back the layers of someone else's life, a life I had no right to invade. Suddenly, a noise broke the unsettling silence, a rustling from the back of the warehouse. Panic surged as I turned to leave, but in the dim light, I noticed a shadow moving among the debris. In sheer desperation, I ran toward the exit, the crunch of broken glass beneath my feet echoing like a siren. As I stumbled through the doorway, I caught a glimpse of a figure. A man, dirty and disheveled, with wild eyes that burned with fury and fear. He lunged at me, and I felt a surge of primal instinct take over. I pushed him away, adrenaline propelling me forward as I dashed into the night. I didn't look back, didn't stop to reflect on my actions. The thrill of escape mixed with the sickening realization of my cowardice. I returned to my friends, heart pounding and breathless. They laughed and cheered, oblivious to the turmoil in my mind. But that night didn't end there. The images of the girl's photograph and the desperate man haunted me. I still felt the rough edges of the photograph pressing into my palm, the weight of my actions suffocating me. I returned home and lay awake, the bar's smells clinging to my clothes, a constant reminder of the chaos I had invited. Days turned into weeks, and I couldn't shake it off. Guilt morphed into a monster, gnawing at my insides, whispering that I had crossed an invisible line. I began to see shadows everywhere, reminders of that night, that warehouse, the life I had derailed with my curiosity. I found myself driving past that place repeatedly, each time feeling the pull of a vortex, a gravitational force drawing me back into the darkness. Maybe I hoped to confront my demons, or maybe I just wanted to feel the thrill again. I don't know. What I do know is that no amount of denial could erase that moment. The moment I realized that darkness isn't out there. It's a shadow lurking inside us all, waiting for the right moment to break free. As I parked my car one last time in front of that warehouse, I couldn't help but think that I had become part of its story, a living testament to the gruesome dance between curiosity and despair.
I once made a choice that turned my life into a grotesque carnival of shame, and to this day, I can't shake the smell of it. My name is Rachel. a 34-year-old nurse in a small Midwest town where the air is thick with the scent of cornfields and desperation. Beneath my professional facade, I often felt like a puppet on strings, tugged by the weight of expectations and the relentless grind of life. But one fateful night, those strings snapped. It started innocently with a late shift that dragged into the early hours. I was exhausted, the fluorescent lights buzzing overhead like angry bees. As I walked out into the parking lot, I noticed a man sitting by his car, his head buried in his hands. He looked like he'd lost everything, disheveled, unshaven, a shadow of what he might have been. My instinct was to help, to offer comfort as I had for so many others, but instead, something twisted inside me. I approached him, my heart pounding, not with compassion, but with an unsettling thrill. "Are you okay?" I asked, trying to sound sincere. He looked up, his eyes bloodshot and haunted. "No," he said quietly. "I just lost my job, my family." I could see the desperation pooling around him like an oil slick, and instead of feeling pity, I felt a rush of power. I told him I could help, that I had connections, and invited him to my place for a drink. As we drove, the smell of stale cigarettes clung to the air like a bad memory, and I felt a thrill of adrenaline. We arrived at my apartment, where the faint hum of the refrigerator filled the silence. The man entered, and I sensed his vulnerability, raw and exposed. We sat on my worn-out couch, and I poured us both a drink, the amber liquid sloshing against the glass, pooling like liquid courage. My heart raced as I watched him, the way his hands trembled slightly, as if holding on to the last shred of hope. But somewhere deep inside, my conscience faded, replaced by an insatiable hunger for something darker. As the night wore on, I began to share my struggles, weaving tales of my own discontent, but inside, I was plotting. The thrill of manipulation took over, and I leaned in closer, watching his every reaction. I could see the flicker of trust in his eyes, the way he leaned into my words as if they were a lifeline. To me, he was just a pawn in a twisted game. Then came the moment of truth. I suggested a deal, one that required him to let down his guard completely. I watched as he hesitated, sweat beading on his brow. But desperation won out. He agreed, and I felt the surge of power course through me. The air in the room grew thick, suffocating, and I reveled in it. I knew this was wrong, but the adrenaline was intoxicating, and I didn't stop. We engaged in a warped exchange, a dance of vulnerability and deceit, and it was the most exhilarating and horrifying experience of my life. The tension was electric, the smells of cheap liquor and anxiety swirling together in a nauseating concoction. I felt like a puppet master, pulling strings and watching him unravel. Each moment I watched him, I knew I was crossing a line, but the more I pushed, the more alive I felt. As dawn broke, the first rays of light filtering through the grimy window, the reality of what I had done clawed at me. The euphoria faded, leaving only a bitter taste, like rotten fruit. I realized I had taken advantage of a man at his lowest, manipulating his despair for my own twisted satisfaction. He left, a broken shell of a man, and I was left with the stench of regret, the weight of my actions pressing down like a leaden blanket. I told myself it was just a game, a moment of weakness in a world that had drained me dry. But deep down, I knew I had crossed a line that couldn't be uncrossed. There are no lessons in this confession, only the haunting reminder that sometimes the monster isn't hiding in the shadows. Sometimes it wears your face.
I never imagined I'd become a character in my own horror story, but here we are. I'm Alex, a 28-year-old living in a rundown apartment in Atlanta. My life revolves around a dead-end job in customer service and walls covered in peeling paint that seem to close in on me. I often feel suffocated by the mundane reality of existence.
Then came that day, the one that changed everything. It started like any other afternoon, with a stale smell of takeout lingering in my apartment. The air felt heavy with regret and remnants of my last meal, congealing in a plastic container on my desk. I had just finished another dreary shift when I received the text from a friend I hadn't heard from in years. "Party at my place tonight. You should come." Despite my anxiety, I decided to go. When I arrived, the atmosphere was electric, a sharp contrast to my solitude. Laughter echoed against the walls, mixed with the scent of cheap beer and sweat. The crowd was a sea of unfamiliar faces, yet I felt drawn to their chaos. As the night wore on, I drank more than I intended, my inhibitions slipping away. I found myself in the kitchen, staring into the bottom of a nearly empty bottle, when someone shouted, "Truth or dare?" The room erupted with energy. I was swept up in the moment, laughing and cheering, forgetting my usual reservations. When it was my turn, I chose dare, heart racing with excitement and fear. "Go outside and kiss the first person you see," came the challenge. I stumbled into the cool night air, the concrete beneath my feet feeling slick. Just as I turned the corner, I saw him, an older man, disheveled and unkempt, sitting alone against a wall. My heart sank, but I was already in too deep. I approached him, nerves rushing through me. "Hey, I have to kiss you," I said, half laughing, half ashamed. To my surprise, he looked up, confusion in his eyes. With a forced smile, I leaned in, our lips met for a fleeting second. The moment felt surreal, like I was trapped in a twisted dream. Then came the horror. As I pulled away, I glimpsed his eyes, the sadness, the desperation. I'd invaded his space, a moment of vulnerability turned grotesque. My stomach churned as I registered the filth on his skin, the lingering scent of regret in the air. What had I done? I felt like I was drowning in shame, the laughter from the party fading into the distance. I stumbled back inside, a wave of nausea washing over me. I tried to shake off the encounter, but the feeling lingered, a stain I couldn't scrub away. I was just playing a game, right? But I had crossed a line, and the weight of my actions pressed heavily on me. My heart raced, and as I sat in a corner of the party, I could still feel the man's gaze burning into my mind, a mirror reflecting my own disgust. The rest of the night blurred into a haze, but the image of that man remained etched in my thoughts. I left the party, the cool night air doing nothing to dispel the heat rising in my cheeks. Each step home felt like dragging a boulder behind me, a reminder of my choices, the darkness I embraced. I walked through the streets, the city lights flickering above, feeling like a ghost haunting my own life. I couldn't shake the feeling that I had not just embarrassed myself, but violated something sacred. Now, every time I close my eyes, I see that man's face, hear the regret in the silence that follows. I don't know what became of him, or if I'll ever see him again, but his presence lingers, like a shadow, haunting my thoughts. I wish I could say I've learned something, that I've emerged a better person, but in truth, I've learned how easily one can slip into disgrace and how hard it is to find one's way back.